Hello hunters, and welcome to the end of the world. Fatalis is probably one of the hardest monsters I've seen in World, and it definitely lives up to the legend. So today I want to give you guys a rundown of the Fatalis basic attacks, and I will have a separate video later on just the tips and tricks that you need to keep in mind when you're hunting this monster. This video is going to focus on the objectives and the concept of the hunt, and then we'll look at each of the attacks individually to see where you can get your openings for damage, or just to maneuver and dodge just to avoid getting hit by this powerful creature. So in terms of Fatalis himself, he is highly weak to dragon, so a dragon weapon build would be a great choice. If you don't have a good dragon build, you can use raw, though it may be a little bit more effort to kind of get the damage that you want. In terms of armor, Safi is a great choice to enhance your dragon damage. But if this is your first time going into the fight, he has a number of successive attacks, and honestly, the little health that you lose from Safi might make the difference between life or death. So if this is your first hunt, I wouldn't entirely recommend Safi unless you're up to the challenge. A regular Master Touch build will be just fine for this hunt if you have the Electron weapons. Great purple sharpness, it'll keep your damage real high. For light weapons, I'm going to quickly mention you should craft the new Shaver Jewel. That reduces the amount of clutch clawing you need by 1 to tenderize a part, and it's super effective. Fatalis is really dangerous, so doing 2 clutch claws is quite a risk. In terms of the concept of the hunt, it's a 3-phase hunt, where the first 2 he really introduces all of his attacks, and then the third phase he essentially becomes a god mode where most of his attacks become one-shots. There's really only 2 parts that you should be targeting, the head and the chest, but unfortunately the head is really high up at the start, and this is because Fatalis generally has 2 modes, one standing on his hind legs and the second is when he's down on all 4. Now if your weapon can't reach the head, the mechanic that you have to use is attacking the chest enough until he tumbles to the ground. So you can see here he's on all 4 and we've been hitting the chest quite a bit, so he falls down and he has a big animation that shows for it. As you can see as well, that big animation can knock you down. It is a pin move, so be aware to avoid that. So for all 3 phases, the general idea is that you're essentially attacking the chest until he falls to the ground or comes on all 4, and then you go for the head as much as possible. If you're using Insect Glaive, Switch Axe, light bowguns, heavy bowguns, anything that can do damage on the head at all times, then you're okay. But if you have any close, low damage melee weapons, you've got to hit the chest to drop him. The main purpose for this is because you've got to break the heads. The heads are crucial, just like in Electron. They were very crucial to that hunt, but in this hunt, the only thing that they change is that they lower his damage in phase 3. Remember when I said he becomes a god? Well, if you break his horns before phase 3, he's not going to be that god. The important one is the first horn. That one greatly reduces the damage. The second horn brings him back to normal damage, but even if you don't break the second, you will be able to survive most of his attacks in phase 3. So that's really the objectives that you have for this hunt and the overall concept. Let's talk about some of his attacks now. I'll talk about the ultimates first for each phase and then his regular attacks. Just before though, I want to mention that he drops a lot of dragon pods, and I cannot stress enough how important these are. 2 pods will flinch him out of like 98% of his attacks, creating a big safe period for you and your teammates. Now the pods make him wiggle like crazy, so you won't be able to get head damage, but this does save you if you're in a bad position, save a teammate if they need it, give yourself some time to heal, or it does open up the chest for chest damage to help you drop him faster. So just keep this mechanic in mind that any of the attacks that we talk about in this video, you can flinch him with this and create that safe space if you need it. So in all 3 phases, his ultimate is an area clearing fire breath. He's going to fly far into the air and then he's going to breathe fire over the entire map. Your goal is to get to the safe spots, which change in each phase. In phase 1, it's to the right of the map when you land. It's the little hut in the corner. In phase 2, it is the gate on top of the Dragonator, so you have to run to the back of the map and close the gate in time. In phase 3, it is right below Fatalis. He's going to fly away to the farthest point away from you, and your goal is to run right after him and get underneath him. For all of these attacks, the fire will start to hit you and it'll burn for about 5 seconds before he switches from burning to a one-shot. So you relatively have about 10 seconds, including his flying time and his burning time, to get to the safe area. Next, he's got a number of fire attacks, so let's go over those. The biggest one you want to look out for is the area clearing fire dragon breath. It's usually when he's on all 4s and it spreads across the map, kind of like in a triangle shape. He blows for a good 5 seconds, and then at the end a firebomb appears right where his face is. So if you're trapped in this fire breath, it constantly damages you, and even with high fire resistance you will take massive damage. So the best thing to do is to avoid this attack. Insect glaive users, you can fly out of it. It's pretty easy. Charge blade and lance users, you guys can block this if you have a shield with high guard. Foresighting with longsword, I don't think you can do this. I haven't tested it precisely myself yet, but I think the attack lasts longer than your foresight dodge. So just keep that in mind. The indicators you should be looking out for is that he will be on all four legs and he'll look down and make a large sucking noise to kind of prepare for the blast. That'll give you an indication that you should get out of the way. Now if you can't block it, there are 3 blocks spread out around the map that you can actually hide behind, and they will protect you for most of it. Don't be too close to the rocks though, because his attack kind of penetrates at the very last second. So you can hide behind these if it's your last resort and you can't make it to him, but I would highly recommend trying to dodge, because if you can, this attack leaves his head wide open for quite a number of hits that you can do before it finishes. Aside from this fire breath, he has a couple more fire breaths, all smaller but still fairly high damage. If he's on all 4, he has another map clearing one where he goes from left to right or right to left. It's pretty slow, so I'd recommend just getting near his head and you'll be able to avoid it. The others are similar, but it's when he's standing on his hind legs. Similar to the first attack, it'll constantly damage you, but rather than blowing across the map, he actually blows right below him. So just be aware that he will use this as protection to protect his chest area, so don't try to do very long combos in the chest area. One good thing I will note here is that all fire breaths you can clutch claws. This is a great time to weaken the head. Now, just to be clear, aside from fire breathing, he also has fireball attacks, and these ones you can't clutch claw his head. They will actually blast you right off. These fireballs are faster, and he'll typically shoot 3 to 4 at one target specifically. His last shot though, as you can see right here, he's going to charge it for quite a bit longer, so it's a much stronger shot. Very easy to dodge though. If you just keep moving around, you should be totally fine. Just keep in mind, if you haven't broken the horn by phase 3, any one of those fireballs can one-shot you. Speaking of one-shots, he does have a charged fireball shot that he shoots right in front of him when he's on all 4. This blast is pretty deceiving because it looks like it's quite well away from his body, but it actually blasts from the blast center all the way to his front arms. So if you're near the chest and damaging, you will still get hurt. Your best bet is to actually be between the arms and the hind legs. This is the closest safe area that you can be, and then as soon as he shoots, you can get back to the chest to damage. You must keep an eye on the ground as well though. Similar to Latreon, Fatalis has some ground attacks with fire that will leave a mark, and they kind of like stay there for a couple seconds before blowing up. Their hitboxes are pretty tight though, and they glow quite well, so you can really see where you have to dodge or which way you have to go. Aside from fire attacks, Fatalis does have some melee attacks, and one of the biggest ones that I mentioned before is that you need to worry about when you knock him from his hind legs to all 4. He does a full falling animation, and you will actually be pinned and thrown back to the ground if you get hit by this. Even with Rocksteady, you will be pinned. When he's on his hind legs, he'll also swing out his arms just to kind of like hit you or like swipe at you. They're pretty easy. If you get close to his chest, you can dodge them or you can just roll. When he's all 4, he's got a more devastating attack, which is kind of like a slithering snake. So you'll see it right here. He gets down and then he just starts crawling across. That one has a huge hitbox. If you're close to his head, arms, hind legs, even wings, you will get hit. So it's definitely an attack that you want to stay well away from. Other variations of this, instead of slithering, he'll just take 2 big steps forward. So as you can see here, he'll take 2 steps and kind of bite at the same time. So you'll still get hit with the same hitbox, head, arms, hind legs, and the wings, but it's a little easier to dodge. Be aware as well, he does have 2 tail attacks, 1 slam and 1 whip. The slam isn't too bad, it's a very narrow hitbox that just comes straight down, but the whip has a much wider hitbox and it'll brush across almost the entire map, so you gotta avoid that tail at all costs. So those are the basic attacks that he has, and now in phase 3 though, just keep in mind that he does enhance most of these attacks, especially the fire ones if the horns are not broken. Most particularly in phase 3, he does come up with a new fire breath attack, which is a 360 fire attack, and he'll start this by charging his fire by looking at one of his arms. Now the arm that he looks at is the opposite direction of where that 360 spin is going to go. So you have a couple seconds here to get to the chest as close as possible or run as far back away from him as possible. The chest is the safest spot to be able to attack as well, so if you can't make it, Dolphin Dive is your best friend, or shield users you can block it, Insect Glaive you can fly as usual. And that's about it for Fatalis' attacks. His attacks are quite dangerous even with high tier gear. Honestly, we haven't had a hunt that I thought Divine Blessing was necessary, but this one, it actually is kind of key. One more reminder again I'll throw out here. Dragon pods. Dragon pods, dragon pods, dragon pods. They stop almost every attack and they're so key in the hunt. If you're ever in a situation they can't dodge or attack, just throw those 2 pods, flinch him, give yourself that opening. I will have another video on a full guide of what to do for each phase to defeat Fatalis. If not already, it's probably already on the channel by the time you see this. I just wanted to talk about the attacks in more detail because they are quite unique and dangerous, but this hunt becomes a whole lot easier if you know what's coming at you. Good luck, hunters, and we will see you in the next one.